We are now going to examine one of the central features of our governmental system, federalism. Federalism is one of the central solutions to the Articles of Confederation and the lack of power of the central government. Yes, federalism gives the central government more power than the states. However, the states still have more powers that are uniquely their own and can't be infringed by the central government. What is federalism? Understanding how power is shared between the central government and local governments is essential to understanding what federalism is. However, federalism is not the only model for sharing power between the central and local governments. The next 3 slides will examine how power is shared in a unitary system, a confederation, and a federal system of government. Most countries in the world today have unitary systems of government. Two such governments, are the United Kingdom and France. In a unitary government, local governments derive authority from the central government and are dependent on its will. If you notice in the chart, the central government here, it is at the heart of the system. Powers from the central government, they go out to the states. So in other words, the local governments can only do what the central government allows them to do. For example, in France, the central government has direct control over welfare, highways, education, the police, and the use of land. Each of the local governments, say for example this one here, they can elect a mayor, or they have someone that serves as a liaison to the central government, and they bring back to the local government directions from the central government on how to govern. The next system of government is a confederation. Yes, this is a type of government the United States had under the Articles of Confederation. In a confederal system of government, the states are sovereign as well as independent. The national government is only allowed to do what the states allow it to do. As you can see in this chart, the states are on the top of the hierarchy, indicating its dominance over the central government. Another way of putting it is that the power from the local governments flows down to the central government. And if you recall, under the Articles of Confederation, if the central government asks for money from the states could say, no, we're not going to give you the money that you need, because the power flows down, not up. The United States and Canada are 2 examples of a federal system of government. In a federal system of government, the power is divided between the central and local governments. As you can see from the chart, the central government is at the top, with the local governments underneath, which indicates that the central government here it is, the central government is supreme over the states. We'll address this more in detail when we get to class. You will also notice on the chart that there are boxes labeled shared powers and reserved powers. There are 2 types of reserved powers. One is the reserved powers for the federal government. The other is the reserved power for the states. Although the federal system of government, the central government is supreme, it still shares some of the powers with the government. But there are some powers that belong solely to the federal government and some that belong solely to the states. Examples of shared powers for both the federal and state governments include exercising the power to make laws and the power to impose taxes. Examples of reserve powers of the federal government includes the power to declare war, print money, and regulate interstate commerce. As you can recall back to the Articles of Confederation, when they allowed the states to make their own money, the money was worthless. That's why it makes sense that only one element of the government should be able to make money. Examples of reserve powers of the states include ratifying constitutional amendments, conducting elections, both state and federal, issuing drivers and marriage licenses. The power trickles down in a federal system of government. However, even within the states, there is still a further division of power. Each state is organized with state government at the top, followed by the division of county, city, and towns. So depending upon where you live, what state you live, your counties are very powerful or your cities can be more powerful. But either way, there is still a division of power underneath the state government. With federalism, we have decentralization of politics, which provides more opportunities for people to participate in the political process. If a person is elected from one of the various governmental bodies at the state level, counties, cities, and towns, there is a smaller constituency. The constituency consists of the people who elect the representative and are represented by that person. An official elected at the local level has a greater impact on the community because they have a smaller constituency. The decentralization of our politics not only increases participation, but it also lowers the cost of organizing political activity. The responsibility of all elections, federal, state, and local, fall on the states. Therefore, the country is dividing the cost of elections over 50 states. Federalism also offers the opportunity for the decentralization of policies. In other words, each state can solve a problem in its own unique way. States serve as laboratories for solving the problems of the government and society. For example, a solution to address crime in Virginia might not work in Montana. Some states offer opportunities for direct democracy, such as initiatives, referendums, and recalls to address problems. An initiative allows voters to place laws or constitutional amendments directly to the vote of the people, whereas a referendum allows voters to reject a law adopted by a state legislature. In other words, if the people don't like a law passed by the state legislature, they can vote for a referendum to repeal that law, and the state legislature can do nothing about that. A recall allows voters to remove an elected official from office. So if you don't like your governor, you can start a recall petition. Like most recently in Wisconsin, the people tried to recall their governor, but the vote failed. In Virginia, statewide initiatives begun by citizens and referendums are only allowed at the local level. That is, if the county, city, or town allows for it. Lastly, yes, recall is available in Virginia. So if we don't like our governor, we can recall him or her, or we can recall any of our members of our General Assembly. When the framers were drafting the Constitution, they carefully defined the powers of the state and national government. At this time, take a moment to review Table 3.2 in Chapter 3. This table delineates the powers of the federal government and state governments. Despite the separation of powers, the federal government is clearly supreme over the states. The constitutional support for the supremacy of the federal government in Article 6 of the Constitution, which states the Constitution's laws of the national government and treaties are the supreme law of the land. If you don't believe me, read Article 6 for yourself. If you recall, Table 3.2 not only lists the powers of the national government, but also the reserved powers of the states. Well, where do the states derive their power? Do you know? Of course you do, because you looked at the Constitution. It is in the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment states that power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. In other words, what that means is if a power is not given to the federal government and in the Constitution, and then if the Constitution does not say that the states can't do that power or have no power to do that, then that power belongs to the states. There is much more that you need to learn about federalism, and we'll finish the lecture in class.